Welcome everyone, Costin here with my Major God tier list for Age of Mythology Retold for 1v1 games. 2v2s, 3v3s, all the way up to 6v6 would have a very different meta, because certain gods that might be weak in 1v1 can be really good in team games. And certain gods that are good in 1v1 may not necessarily be quite as strong in team games, especially gods that have a bunch of early game benefits that do allow you to rush quite effectively. So with that in mind, let's start with the Greeks and start with Zeus. I think Zeus is an A-tier god. He has better heroes and ones that you train faster. He starts with favor, gains favor faster. In the previous version, he could gain more favor than anyone else. That's been removed. Favor is uncapped, but he still has that favor benefit. Other people have favor benefits as well, but Zeus has the lightning bolt ability, which can instantly kill many enemy units. And then with those heroes with extra HP, he can deal with myth units quite effectively in multiple ways. Then he has an infantry speed benefit. And on top of that, with Athena, he has healing benefits and specifically hoplite benefits. Ares may be stronger on the offense in some ways, but Athena is really good keeping your guys alive with her healing ability that you can now recast. And because you do have that favor of benefit, it is a pretty strong situation. In the late game, I would say one of the problems with Zeus is that he has no real powerful myth unit. Rather, he has situational myth units. That would be my perspective. My Minotaurs are great early game, but they do lose some of their luster long term. Medusa are very situational. Colossi are very expensive and, again, very situational. Lightning Storm is a really powerful ability with Hera, but you're losing the major economic benefits they do get with Hephaestus. And let me just say it, Lightning Storm does not necessarily compare to Earthquake in quite a few ways. So there are some downsides with Zeus, but he is a very rock-solid god that a lot of people can get used to. And he's pretty easy to understand and to use as a god. Then you have Poseidon. Poseidon may genuinely have one of the best food economies, at least early on in the game. The reason behind this is with the lure ability, you have it act against a granary, so you don't have to get the granary as quickly as other people may have to do so, which is actually a significant benefit early on from a lumber perspective. And you can use it to lure animals to a safe location for your villagers, preventing the enemy from raiding you quite as easily. That is pretty powerful. You do have naval ability, like on naval maps. Obviously, things would change. Poseidon may rule the waves really on naval maps. Naval scouting, for instance, various upgrades that he does have. But on land, he's really, really solid with cavalry. So solid with food, solid with cavalry, solid with the gods that he gets later on. Not necessarily quite as ridiculous in terms of his heroes, nor near as ridiculous in terms of his heroes as Zeus is. Because while Polyphemus is pretty strong as a hero, I would dare say that Bellerophon, that Zeus does get, is an absurd hero. Probably the strongest hero that the Greeks do have. Then we have Hades. Hades is an S tier, a very easy S tier. He has an economic benefit with gold in Age 1. He has a strong defensive benefit with Sentinel that you can recast. He has extra range and free upgrades for his towers and ranged units. He has better ranged units than anyone else. And his unique unit, while certainly Myrmidons and the elite cavalry that Poseidon does have, those are also very strong. The fact that you have a ranged unit that's really good against buildings is not something to laugh at. You also have a significant economic benefit with Aphrodite that Zeus doesn't have. Poseidon does have Aphrodite. So you get the 10% economic benefit if you go with Aphrodite, which may free you up to go with Artemis as opposed to Hephaestus in Age 4. So be it in the early game surviving enemy rushes, he's more defense-oriented, but his defenses are pretty damn strong with those Sentinels, the masses of ranged unit, the free gold that you are getting with him. I think Hades is the go-to god for a lot of people starting in the game right now. Like, I would say Zeus is probably easier to understand, but the benefits that Hades has, just preventing an enemy from raiding your base early on without having to rely on towers is a pretty damn significant benefit. And making your town center or your original town center damn near impregnable until the enemy starts using god powers or bring siege is also a pretty damn powerful benefit as well. Then we get to the Egyptians. Isis. Well, I would say Isis is probably... It's a good question. I think she's also an A-tier god. The reason I would say that, she gets a significant gold benefit that she does have. She gets a significant defense benefit because her monuments protect you against enemy god powers. So that is really strong to use as Isis. She doesn't necessarily have the best minor gods available, but she does have Osiris, and the son of Osiris is... Damn. That thing is scary in Retold. Far scarier than it was in original, especially since you can recast it. So defensive bonuses with monuments. So someone trying to use something like a tornado, someone trying to use an earthquake on you, that's just not going to work. The gold benefit, though, is really, I think, what sells Isis, because having a really powerful gold-generating god ability as your starting god ability for Egyptians who rely on gold so heavily for a lot of things, for their structures, for a lot of their units, for a lot of their myth units, is a gigantic benefit that you do start with. Then you have Set. I would say Set is an S-tier god. The reason he's an S-tier god is he gets those animals of Set. That's one thing. He has a good selection of gods. That's another thing. He has map vision that helps you out, figure out where the enemy is, what they're doing. That, yeah, it's really powerful, and you can recast it many, many times to get that kind of vision. Information is power. And then while he doesn't have the monument protection that Isis has, he does have better performing buildings around monuments. So you're just doing things faster than anyone else with spamming the trash units of Egypt, basically. But you're not necessarily particularly weak in the long term as well. So you got a good selection of gods all the way from the classical age to the mythic age. You have fairly strong benefits. Not quite the major economic benefit of Isis, but just being able to spam units, get them out there, know where to hit the enemy, know where it hurts, is pretty damn powerful. And you get a lot of favor because you do have the ability of going with Anubis and his particular benefit. I would say Anubites are not necessarily the greatest unit in the world, but, I mean, so does Isis, for the record. But I would say, like, just vision is so crucial. May not necessarily be the best in a very long game compared to some of the other gods that are available, but having a significant early game benefit in terms of information, being able to raid the opponent, just being able to get spam units, pretty powerful benefit. Then we have Ra. Ra, I would qualify as a god that's pretty good in a long game or a team game, but not necessarily in the early game, because his benefits, his empowering benefit with priests that he does get, his Migdal Stronghold benefits, those take time to really use. And then his farming benefit, which is useless in the early game, basically. So, like, Isis gets a lot of gold. Set gets a lot of, free units or free animals of Set, which pretty significant having those kind of units available, and has good selection of gods. Ra doesn't quite have that benefit. He does have that empower benefit, but it just takes a lot of priests and a decent amount of time to get that going. So I would say he's a C-tier god. In a team game, he would be much higher, maybe at the very least an A, maybe even an S. But in like 1v1, I'd probably put him in C. Odin, S-tier, easily S-tier as a god. Odin has great scouting ability on the map, pretty much unparalleled, I would say, in the game. Because, like, yeah, you do have that scouting ability with Set, but, like, Odin just has scouts he gets from the temple. That's already one thing. Second thing, very powerful food benefit. Maybe Poseidon is better in a lot of ways, to be sure, but multiplying animals and even generating some of them for free if you don't have any animals is pretty damn powerful as an initial god power because of two things. One, it gives you more food from a location, and because your villagers are not having to move around, you have those villagers in a safer situation. But on top of that, on top of that, because they're in a safer situation, they're more difficult to take out. You don't have to go with farms as early as anyone else. With Odin, pretty damn powerful. And then, going even further, you have Heimdall available as a tier 2 god. And Heimdall does allow you to rush. Like, if you're looking to rush an opponent early in the game, like Odin might just be the best choice in the game, I think. just because like you can remove any enemy tower more or less, or destroy their fortifications pretty easily with Heimdall's ability that you can reuse. And let's just say Heimdall's myth unit are fairly strong. Like you want to go push a Russian opponent, having units that gain the significant benefit from the horn they have in combat, like more or less a mini Arcantos ability. Also a very strong and powerful ability that you can use. So yeah, Odin dominates, I would say, in the early game in a lot of ways. Just that scouting ability, the food generating ability, may not necessarily be so great in a very, very long game, but like for a 1v1, I would say he's pretty strong. Then we have Freyr. Freyr is a tricky one, I would dare say. Because on one hand, his base is flat out impregnable initially. Like between the hill forts that he can get in tier 2, the boar that he can summon, the fact that he has cheaper technologies, though, even though they take longer to make, does make him strong. I do think that a lot more people need to get used to him better. He does have some weaknesses because while technology is researching cheaper, but taking longer can be a pretty powerful benefit, it does mean he's not quite as great in terms of aggression, but he does have a good amount of healing. He does have a good amount. He does save a lot of money with that research. So he's stronger long term, but he is somewhat vulnerable in terms of map control early on, I would dare say. He just doesn't have the same kind of map control that some of the others do have in the game. So I think, like, I would say Freyr is a B tier. Like, that boar can, like, if someone's trying to raid you early on or trying to rush you early on, that boar will destroy that rush. That's no joke. Or the boar combined with the hill fort combined with Draugr archers, pretty strong. The minor gods that he has from H2, H3, H4, very, very strong gods with a lot of benefits added to them. But yeah, more defense oriented. I would say he might be S tier for like team games, but like for 1v1, yeah, he's just a bit behind. I think like he might increase in rank as people get more used to him, but still. Then we have Loki. Yeah, for 1v1, I'd say Loki is probably, I don't know, like I think he's a C tier god. Takes a while to get going. He can summon myth units. He does have a chance of summoning myth units. He can get berserkers from gatherers for free. That's pretty good, but he just doesn't have the same kind of economic benefits that, say, Odin or even Freyr do. So he might have genuinely the worst economy. Like, Ra does have economic benefits, even if his food economic benefits are worthless early on. But he does have some very substantial economic benefits. Whereas Loki has a lot of military power, but he doesn't have the economic power early on, especially to back it up. Then we have 4. Ooh, this one's tricky. So when you look at 4, you might think, oh, he's really powerful because he gets better dwarves, he gets free gold mines. Those are great benefits long term. But early on, you have a pretty good gold mine next to your base. And you have plenty of other gold mines next to your base as well in the maps that are available at the moment. So that's not really an issue. 4 is great in a long game, especially team game. Like, the extra upgrades he gets might make his infantry army the best in the game. Not necessarily the best myth units. But yeah, his power is absolutely there, his economic power, but it takes a while to unlock. And so he does end up, I think, falling in C tier as well, from my perspective. I think there's a lot of potential with Ra and 4, but Loki, like, yeah, Loki just feels like the kind of guy who would win the game with if it lasts very long. Like, Nidhogg is not something to laugh at, for the record. But like with 4, I'm just not necessarily seeing it over there, like, early on, at the very least. I think, like, replacing our initial villagers, like, giving you dwarves and giving you dwarf benefits, yeah, just kind of doesn't work out in certain ways over there. Then we have the Atlantean gods. Oh boy. I think Uranus is a D tier. Like, I know some people will disagree with me on this. People will argue, well, he has a lot of mobility on the map. That's all well and good. Bit of a problem with that. While you can certainly risk a lot more with Uranus with your villagers than you might with other ones, and Atlanteans are overall a good civilization, the problem with Atlanteans, it takes them, like your counter barracks units, they have issues. And while Murmillo are good against everything in this version of the game, I would say it takes Oranos some time to get going. You can fully utilize him to have a lot of map control, a lot of map versatility, but you're going to struggle against some of the initial aggression. And I think right now, at this very moment, I think focusing right now on that early game situation more so than the late game potential is probably more important from my perspective. This brings me to Kronos. I think Kronos is a B tier. Like, Atlanteans do have certain inherent weaknesses that they can work with, but don't get me wrong on that. Like, they can work with it, but unlike Kronos does have the ability of being very aggressive early on. His initial god power of deconstructing enemy buildings means you deconstruct enemy fortifications. Oh, your enemy is just building something that they're going to need to deck up. Just take that away from them. Simple as that. Really good. Really good. You really hurt the enemy with Kronos. The flexibility you have in terms of moving your buildings may not necessarily be quite as important, but I would dare say like just the deconstructability is significant. The gods that he has available are also fairly strong. Then we have Gaia. Gaia doesn't necessarily have some of the offensive benefits as everyone else or a lot of other people, but damn does she have a great economy. You start with hero villagers or hero citizens as Gaia that are just better than others. You can get economic benefits faster than anyone else. So you may realistically with Gaia end up with one of the strongest early game economies in the game. Like such a ridiculous economy that you might even surpass an AI with a 25% benefit and may even compete with an AI with a 50% economic benefit. Just as an example, right? The AI cheats ridiculously in Skirmish. That is important to understand because Gaia may not have some of the ludicrous powers some of the others do have, but having a very strong early game economy can carry a lot. Like you can get to higher ages faster than anyone else. You can have a stronger economy early on. You can have a far stronger economy later on, and you can boom in a way that few others can compare with. Like ISIS obviously has a lot of power, but keep in mind something about ISIS. ISIS ultimately is limited by the fact the Egyptian roster, at least the early one, is not especially great. The Atlantean roster is made up of a lot of strong units. Expensive ones, for the record, and limited until you get to H3, but once you get to H3, do things change very quickly. And Fanatics at tier 4, incredible. She does also have a good selection of minor gods available to her. So yeah, I would say Gaia is also a B tier god. You may not get away with the same kind of rush tactics that you would with, say, Odin, or even Set, or Zeus, or Poseidon, what have you, but the fact that you have a very strong economy is pretty useful. You can make a lot of mistakes with Gaia that you wouldn't get away with a lot playing as other gods, and you can get away with it. This is my personal perspective at the moment. Like, I understand the potential of, like, some of the lower tier gods, don't get me wrong. Like, I really grasp the fact that, you know, Oranos' teleportation ability on the map with sky passages, it's a very strong benefit. But I think, like, the other gods, well, I think that's very strong, especially because you can put your villagers and risk a lot more in terms of gathering resources, and the enemy discovers that and starts trading, you know, just teleport them away, no problem. Or dump an entire freaking army behind the enemy lines. That's powerful. I don't deny that. But Atlanteans just take a while to get going. Kronos makes it work because he has early aggression benefits. Gaia has economic benefits. Oranos has more of a mid to late game benefit. That's how I would describe it. That's my perspective on it. So the way to view it is the gods at the top are much better in the early game than the gods at the bottom, from my perspective. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Stay tuned for more. And look, I am no expert on this. I haven't played thousands of hours in Extended Edition. But having played as much as I have in Retold, this is where I stand at the moment. And I think what I'm saying here is, or at the very least, the listing is, for the most part, in line with what other people are saying. I would say the major exception I probably, in my list, would probably be something like Gaia versus Oranos. A lot of people in the multiplayer community seem to value Oranos' mobility far more than Gaia's economic benefits. I understand why they do so. But put yourself in the shoes of someone trying to learn the game. Like, this is one thing that shouldn't be ignored. ease of use. Gaia is very easy to use, as an example. Freyr is very easy to use as well. I mean, sure, Hades might be the easiest to use, and so is Odin, very easy to use. But understand, right? Ease of use, being able to pick up something, get used to it, is something that I consider important with something like this. That's where I stand. Costin signing out.